just going to wait a couple minutes until people start rolling in, and we'll get started at around 5:35. In the meantime, everyone, you could just put in the chat how you're feeling on this Friday night. Tired, hungry, liberated. I like that. Physics, I can relate. 11 p.m. Where are you from? Nigeria. Wow. Okay. Alberta. Right. We've got representation across Canada. That's nice to know. Mackenzie, you mean 4:30 p.m., right? Please tell me you mean 4:30 p.m. Okay, good. Yeah, just you can drop in the chat where you're from. You can also, if you're willing to, give your age, what grade you're in, any specific interests. Introduce yourself to everyone. All right, so it's 5:35 and we're just going to get started now. So a quick introduction. My name is Samantha Oying, as I'm sure you can see from my Zoom, my Zoom name. And I am the founder of Superposition Toronto. If you don't know what Superposition Toronto is, or if this is the first time that you're attending one of our events, we are a student-led nonprofit dedicated to bridging the gender gap in STEM through educational opportunities and supportive communities. So today you're attending our Female Founders in Tech panel, and we're so excited to have our panelists here today. And with that being said, we can just get started on with the introductions. So how about we start with Ravina?
Yeah, awesome. Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking your time today to join us. And to listen to us share our experiences, and hopefully this is quite engaging. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop it in the chat and hopefully I can answer it at some point. But yeah, a little bit about me. I'm a born and raised Albertan, a very proud one. And I'm sure you're all joining us from everywhere around. So happy to see some fellow Canadians here, some people down south and from around the world. Super exciting. Yeah, a little bit about my background. I pursued a Bachelor of Science, but I was quite multidisciplinary. So I did a lot of research in religion and politics, as well as in genetics and obesity. I spent a lot of my undergrad trying to dive into experiences that would allow me to foster experiential learning. I had the opportunity to travel to Germany, Poland, Taiwan, Israel, Portugal, all these fantastic places, and really get the opportunity to learn about their culture, problems that they were facing, and recognizing that we as a society face quite similar issues despite our geographical locations, recognizing that these big global problems really are impacting us in significant ways, and we can come together to solve those big problems. Afterwards, I decided to pursue a master's of public policy and global affairs. I focused on security, tech, and defense. At the University of British Columbia, I had the opportunity to go on a research mission investigating gender-based violence in conflict regions. I went to Geneva, New York, The Hague, attended the Assembly of State Parties, working closely with the Women's Initiative for Gender Justice. Afterwards, throughout that journey, really, I have always been a builder and creator. So creating initiatives, very active on campus, solving problems and bringing them to the forefront of my community. And so during my master's and up until now, I've been creating and building Flick, which is a community platform that helps connect female identifying leaders and founders with ambitious verified female talent through meaningful apprenticeships. Really that power of technology to solve gender equity and advance women's economic participation. We are in 54 different countries. We've matched over 2,000 women, and we're really here to redefine who can be an entrepreneur, what an entrepreneur looks like, what problems they're solving, and reshape the landscape really of moving towards a direction of social entrepreneurship. I was also accepted into medical school at the University of Calgary. I am currently on leave. And so I do have a huge passion for the future of space medicine, computational epidemiology, and once again, bringing my passion and love for technology to solve the big problems, whether socially related or in the future in the medical field.
All right, thank you for that. And next we can move on to Nabiha.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Ravina, you're amazing. And I actually read about Flick and saw the amazing work you're doing. So it's super cool to meet you in person, and congratulations. That's incredible. Hi, everybody. So nice to be here. Always excited to hang out with brilliant women and be inspired by them. So just excited to do that on a Friday night. My story, let's see where to begin. So my parents are from Bangladesh, which is next to India, and my dad was a foreign service officer. So I actually had a chance to travel the world with them. I was born in Saudi Arabia, and that's why I have an Arabic name, and then moved to Germany, lived there till I was 14. And then I moved to Sri Lanka for high school. And it was an intense time because Sri Lanka had the 2004 tsunami happen while we were there, and hundreds of thousands of people died in South Asia in that entire region, which was quite intense. So that's, I was the same age as a lot of you are today in the audience. And then they also spun into a civil war during that time. So high school was strange. Couldn't really go out very much, and had to stay indoors a lot because there were suicide bombings happening in my neighborhood on a weekly basis. So it wasn't a very safe place. So I decided, okay, um, this is a great chance for me to try to make the most of what's going on at school. So I'm gonna work on that. And that was a great choice because I did really well, and I was at the Columbia International School and topped my grade and was able to get a full scholarship to move to the US. And that was a great experience, great learning experience for me. I ended up moving to Atlanta to go to Emory University. And at the time, I was very sure that I wanted to study physics. And that's been something I was passionate about in high school and knew I wanted to major in physics when I got to college. And that whole backstory, I became obsessed with space and astronomy and wanting to be an astronaut. I think we all have those, a lot of those cool ideas, and they're super fun. So I got to Emory, but I was really happy with my choice because I ended up doing a liberal arts degree with the physics major and math minor, but I really loved taking classes in theater and linguistics and sociology. I think they all helped me become a better scientist. So that was really fun and exciting. I ended up doing research pretty early on because I knew I had in my mind this idea, I want to be a physicist. So what do physicists do? They do research in a lab. And I met a really cool professor. His name is Eric Weeks at Emory. And he said, yeah, why don't you just work in my lab over the summer and try it out and explore being a scientist? That'll be a good experience. I said, sure, why not? So that was fun. And for my undergrad thesis for 3 years, I studied glass. And glass is interesting because it's a solid. So when you tap it, it feels like a solid. But when you look at it microscopically, it's not a crystal. It's randomly organized. So there's some very interesting physics happening there. It's called the physics of squishy materials or soft condensed matter. So I had the chance to study that, and was still on this mind track that I wanted to be a scientist. I want to be a physicist. And all the physicists I knew around me were my professors, and they all had PhDs. So I said, okay, I'll try to go get a PhD then. Okay. Applied to several schools and was very fortunate to be accepted to go to Harvard, and got my PhD in physics at Harvard University in Boston, which is where I am today. I've been here for a long time now, almost a decade. And that was a scary, intense transition because you hear a lot about what it's going to be like, and you're wondering, oh, do I even belong here? All of those thoughts crossed my mind the first year I was on campus. But slowly things started to settle down. I found my research lab. The first year of the PhD was super intense, a lot of academic theoretical work. And then I found my research lab the second year. I ended up joining an ultra-fast laser lab and nanofabrication lab. So for my PhD, I worked with pulse laser systems. I did nanofabrication in the clean room with the whole bunny suit. It's a very cool facility they have there where you go in you get to scan your retina to enter the lab, which I love. The PhD was very interesting because I ended up inventing several laser-based methods of editing stem cells. And I found my way towards biology. I knew there were a lot of problems in biology that physics-based tools could solve, and I wanted to be a part of that movement. So I made that transition, and the technology that I had invented was super powerful and excited a lot of my collaborators over at Harvard Medical School. So they all inspired me to become an entrepreneur. It's not something I'd ever planned. So I launched my company in 2017, and it's been a crazy, fantastic ride. I'm definitely learning a lot on the job every day. And right now we have 14 people on my team. We've raised 16 million in venture capital dollars. And we're automating how stem cells are generated for regenerative medicines. And the platform is a combination of machine learning, stem cell biology, and laser physics. So my core inventions for my PhD get to play a role in bringing new medicines forward. So I'm very grateful, and it's been an exciting journey, and excited to see what happens the next couple of years.
Wow, that is super interesting, Naviha. Let's move on to Vu.
Hi, everybody. Very honored to be here and getting to know everybody and sharing some of the experience together with a wonderful panel. My name is Vu. I am originally from Vietnam, currently based in the Bay Area in the US here. A little bit about my background. So was born and raised in Vietnam. I did my college in Vietnam in econ and international business. I then got a chance to work and moved to Denmark, and I was there working for the biggest shipping and logistic company in the world, based in Denmark, as a chief of staff to the CEO. So one of the very early experience, I used to be joking that probably the closest I'll ever get to be a CEO is to be a chief of staff to the CEO. So that's why I took that position. But eye-opening, at the 23 years old, you learn so much about a CEO of a Fortune 100 company, what he does on a daily basis, and learn from that global exposure. Got to travel around the world quite a bit with him. And then decided after a few years at the shipping logistic company in Denmark, it's first love, right? So it's like family, everybody is too nice to you. And I literally came to my boss and say, hey, you guys made it too comfortable, so I want to leave. And go figure out how hard life is out there, because otherwise, you're in that family bubble. They're always going to protect you and they're going to make sure that you do well. And you might never really got to know what reality is out there. So I decided to move to the US. I did my MBA here at Stanford University. I did my master in education here at Stanford University. And originally thought I'm just going to move here for 2 years and will be like traveling around the world every 2 years or so. But you caught the Bay Area bug. You kind of came here. You never left. I think I kind of came from a very cold Denmark, like super dark, super cold, super snowy. And then I got to see the sun. And I kind of fall in love with the sun here, and had been here for the last 11 years or so. Worked in management consulting and for a few years, and then decided to start my own company, follow my passion, which then 5 years ago, I started ELSA, which at the high level, we build a voice recognition technology, artificial intelligence, to help language learners around the world improve their English pronunciation and speaking skill. And it came out of my personal challenge. I was born and raised in Vietnam. Learning English has been a big part of my journey. And just like a lot of us, we study very hard. We spend a lot of time and money. We know how to read very well. We know how to write really well. I probably ace every single test score in English. But when I started moving abroad, and especially here at Stanford, people had a really hard time understanding my English at the beginning. And you realize that in your classroom, you raise your hand and then you try to say something, the professors kind of acknowledge and then moved on to the next person. And they say something really smart, but then professor feel, wow, you are so genius. And then you were sitting there thinking that I was saying the exact same thing 5 minutes ago. How come I didn't get that same attention? And it turned out that the feedback was because of my English being really hard to understand. So I worked really hard on my own English, but then I also want to build a solution that can really help 1 billion people out there improving their English. And also was born 5 years ago. And since then, it's been a roller coaster journey. Everybody who has been a founder would know the high is really high, the low is extremely low, and you probably have a lot more lows than the highs. But it's also the passion that you do is really something that you care so much that it doesn't really matter. You're going to keep going until you see the impact that you do for your users and your community that will just make everything worth it. So that's what I'm still working on, and probably going to continue to do that for the next many years. Great to meet everybody.
Wow, Vu, that was very inspiring. How about we go with China next?
Hey guys, my name is China. I'm super excited just to learn more about all of you guys and kind of what you guys want to do in the tech space. My journey is a little different. I don't have a cookie cutter or traditional route into technology. I'm from the Bay Area, born and raised in the Bay Area, and I'm a creative at heart. So since I was 7 years old, I've been in theater, I do commercials and film. So that was kind of my space. But then I knew I had to go to college, right? Because in the entertainment industry, there's really not a definite way to be successful. So I went to college and I got my bachelor's in healthcare management, and I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So my goal was I was going to get my bachelor's in healthcare management, my master's in healthcare management, and I was going to start my own home care agencies throughout the Bay Area. So I was in my master's program, and then the idea just kind of hit me. I know I'm not really a phone person. I text a lot. But when you're texting so much, you kind of lose the tone of what somebody is saying, right? I know when I'm texting, someone's texting me, I'm like, hold on, are they happy right now? Are they still like, how are they saying this? So I thought of, what if we're able to add our voice to GIFs to communicate without talking on the phone? We started off as a B2C app. And what we did was we were a keyboard that we allowed our users to communicate using Jiffy, and they were able to add their voice or any music from Spotify or YouTube to any GIF in the world and share it as you're texting your family and friends. So it was a kind of a point of, let's bring our voice back into technology, because I think technology has enabled us to not really use our voice and our tone. I launched that around 4 years ago, and maybe 2 years into building my company, Shell and Pennzoil reached out and asked me to create them their own version for the Formula One event. So that's when I had to kind of take a step back and realize, hold on, this is a way for brands to kind of use their voice and their tone to create experiences with their audience using music and sound. So once we started getting partnerships with brands, then we kind of pivoted from B2C to B2B. And now we work directly with the brands and music artists to develop interactive and shareable brand moments using music and GIFs during events and brand activations. So it kind of goes back to my background as storytelling and acting. We're creating these stories using visuals and sound to engage and connect with the brand's audience. So right now we've worked with a couple cool brands. We've been able to increase their brand awareness by 60 to 70%. And this year is our growth year. So now we're just trying to bring more partnerships on board.
All right, that was amazing to hear. I love your story. And lastly, we have Amber.
Well, hi there. Now I need to talk to China about increasing my brand awareness. That's pretty cool. I love that. So I think I'm the odd one in the panel. I have actually been working since I was 14. So I was the kid that broke my mom's toaster and then put it back together again. And her toaster could shoot toast 6 feet in the air. It was awesome. And it really got me interested in technology. And you're going to laugh because a lot of you probably don't watch it, but I watched Star Trek growing up. So I'm a total nerd. And it really got that passion going. But at the end of the day, I really wanted to grow up and be Wonder Woman. And it was that whole fight for justice and really trying to make a huge difference. And so I pursued digital forensics since I was 14. I'm dyslexic, so I do everything backwards naturally. I have 3 kids and I couldn't teach any of them how to tie their shoes because I tied my shoes backwards. And they all kept looking at me like I was nuts, but they got tied. And in that process, I learned taking apart all of cybersecurity and digital security. That is what forensics is. And so I'm able to take apart all of those pieces and put it back together to figure out what happened with them. And my true passion was really making technology. So I founded a technology company and started designing the tech that the very first tool for mobile forensics back when they were PDAs. I've had my company for 22 years plus, and I've been in the same space for 30 years. So it makes me feel really old. I did not chat my age in the list there, but it's been a passion from the very beginning. And I was at most times when I'm in my space, because it's a very male-driven space, I was the only female in the room, or I was the one that was getting set up to give my lecture on cryptography, and they just thought I was setting it up for someone else. They never thought it was me. So these are things that are kind of part of the journey that make it really hard. But I saw growing up, my grandfather was an entrepreneur and I lived with him. He immigrated to the US from Europe and he owned a bakery. And so I saw him get up every day and work hard from 3 a.m. until, 5 p.m. And I said, okay, this is something I know if I can work hard, then I can succeed. And that's where part of my journey is different. I'm very jealous of everyone's education because I am 100% self-taught. So when I got to the opportunity to go to college, my family didn't have any way to send me. So I got some scholarships, but I actually got a degree. Well, I didn't actually finish a degree. I'm a bad example, in culinary arts. So there you go, very different. But I think the big thing is balancing out the technology side of a brain and the creative side of the brain. I think those are super important for you to actually be successful, is to make sure that you always kind of keep both sides of them excited and growing. And so that actually has helped me to design better technology at the end of the day. So, and I'm in Tennessee. I'm living a little bit kind of off-grid-ish. So there you go. I bought a farm when COVID happened. So I'm starting an all natural farm to try to help feed the community around me.
All right, thank you so much for that, Amber. And with that, that concludes all of the panelists' introductions, and we'll just hop right on into our first question. So Amber gave us a great segue there, but our first question is, what have been the biggest challenges you faced throughout your career as a female entrepreneur? And it's open for anyone to just pop in. Yeah.
So I think not coming from a tech background or a marketing background, it was just about kind of forming those relationships for my business. I think that was the hardest part. And I think as a female entrepreneur, I think we just have to realize the power that we bring to anything that we build or any team that we're on. So I think in terms of challenges, I mean, you know, we're still kind of breaking the glass ceiling. But I think understanding and standing in our power and knowing that we belong in these spaces is what's gonna move you forward.
I think one of the biggest challenges I had was there's actually been a lot of harassment. I feel like I'm a little bit of that wet blanket, and you kind of have to be prepared for it. If you're a female and you're fighting and you're young and you're going out into a very male-driven space, you've got to be expected that they're going to assume very different things about you than what you want assumed. And to be able to stand up for yourself and put that down is actually something that's very empowering, but it's like the scariest thing you're ever going to do because you can't discount the fact that that's what they see when you walk in the room. I wish the world was a very different place. They still see it when I get on Zoom calls and they wonder why, you know, who is this person? And you have to be willing to be like, nope, I know my shit and I'm going to own it and put it out there. And I'm in the cybersecurity space. There's still very few women in it. And you have to fight for every piece you get and own it.
I think that is such a good topic to talk about, and no one really talks about being the only female, you know, being in a male-driven industry and kind of like the harassment or sexual harassment that you do receive. So thank you for touching on that, Amber.
Yeah, all right. I
You know,
think
to build on that one, right? One of the earlier one I got, you know, growing up in Vietnam, the job that I applied for was the chief of staff to the CEO of a company in Denmark, which is a country that I don't even never really think I'll ever move there because it's just so far from Vietnam. But you know, the first challenge I got is that my country manager in Vietnam say, I don't think you should apply for that position. And my question was just like, why is that? It's like that position just never, you never really had anybody outside of Danish people to really get that job. But he couldn't really give you a good reason why you wouldn't qualify. He's just gonna say that it's just because it had never really anybody else outside of Danish people and male to ever get that job. So I think the advice I got back then was that just don't let other people tell you what you can and can't, right? Of course, you have to be realistic about where you are and who you are and your capacity. And if you're convinced that, hey, I'm not up for that position because I'm way over my head, then that's for sure, right? Self-awareness is important. But if you're not convinced of the reason why people tell you you can't do it, then you should trust yourself more because you're probably going to be the best advocate for yourself and you know who you are. And so I think that was a challenge. And that move really, I don't know, I can't really figure out what life would be differently, right? Because we would never figure it out. But that has really opened up a lot of opportunities for me. And if I had not been brave enough or just like stubborn a little bit to not listen to the country manager and just be persuaded that hey, that would not be open to another non-Danish, non-male person, then I'll probably be backed out. So I think that was the early challenge, and I wish back then that people would just tell me that don't listen to him. But I was scared, but I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna give this shot and see how far we can get. And since then, I had really been telling a lot of younger female or just like people who think that they are not part of the same league that say, hey, don't let everybody tell you what you can and can't do, and just go for it if you know who you are. And I think that was an early advice I got that was really helpful.
All right, Nabiha, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, lots of thoughts. I had a friend once ask me, why are you always talking about inequality? You know, does this help you in any way? The issues that women have to face? And I said, well, I think the reason we talk about it is because we have to prepare ourselves to deal with it. It's a fact of life. So that's what this conversation is about in so many ways, because unfortunately we do live in an unequal world across so many dimensions, and we're making great progress. I'm really glad I was born in this century and not any previous centuries, because I'm able to do all the things that I'm doing today. But we have a long ways to go to bridge the inequality gap. I'll share one story. Yeah, when I got to Harvard and started my PhD, I would meet a lot of Harvard students in other departments, and they just could never believe that I was a physicist. So it would really turn into this long debate about, you're a physicist? No way. No, right? You're most probably you're doing history or political science. Like, no, I'm actually doing physics. Let's talk about quantum mechanics. Let's talk about string theory. And for the first year or so, I've always felt very upset and stressed out. Why are these people questioning my lifelong passion? I've been working in physics for 10 years now already. And then I tried my best to change my own reference on that. So changing my point of view to be more aligned with, okay, I met this person for the first time and they don't know who I am. They most probably have never seen a physicist who looks like me. Most physicists that you see in the media or in TV shows, you know, have like tufts of hair, old white man in lab coats, like very grumpy. And I definitely don't look like that. I don't dress like that. I could see why there's this clash of what they know to be facts, but you know, I'm presenting a different worldview. So I started seeing it as an opportunity to change people's worldviews, and that was liberating in many ways. And that continues to happen like every day in my job, whether I'm talking to investors or calling a professor for a reference check. I think there's always this question, wow, you're CEO. Wow, okay, you're CEO of a biotech company. Because again, only 5% of biotech companies are led by women. But it's so interesting how changing your perspective can help one deal with the situation. And that's how I've taught myself to process that. And it's an incredible opportunity. I totally relate to you, Amber, of being the only girl in the room. That's been true since college and grad school, and it's also true now in my job. But we're super strong, we're super smart, we can do anything. And I think you all can do anything you put your minds to. So don't let any doubters get in the way.
All right, and Ravina, did you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'll be brief. I completely agree with a lot of the sentiments that were expressed before. And hopefully we have situations where we're not the only ones in the room anymore. We're not the only women in the room or the women of color in the room. And I know for myself, I was very multidisciplinary when I was going through my education and the experience I was having, except for one area, which really was this whole idea of entrepreneurship and business, where I sort of just trickled into it as well. When I was accepted into an entrepreneurial program, not really realizing that that's exactly what it was. I like to say I always got a good targeted advertisement on the day applications were due, and it just said, get up to 80 grand for your idea. And I was like, I always have ideas. But ultimately, when I ended up in this program, less than 18% of our cohort were women, and I was the only woman of color. And I remember saying to myself, like, there's no way there's not other like women of color. Like, I know so many talented Black women. And of course, like being Indian myself, I was like, where are all the Indian girls? Like, I was like, they are pursuing STEM and stuff. So like, where are they? And I was just very confused at that point, because I do think to some degree I was sheltered in the city that I was growing up in, that I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by female professors who were very strong in their areas. And even though I was reading about the inequality that women face and the barriers that they come across, I think very early on, I wasn't necessarily exposed to that. So I didn't conceptualize it as much as what I was reading. But then when I made that move from the West Coast to the East Coast, being in a big city like Toronto, I was like, whoa, this is a real problem, because in my program, especially, everyone was there to build a billion-dollar company. I was there to scale an idea that would help people, that would leave social impact. And so I did feel a huge disconnect between the people I was surrounded by and what my intention was being there. And that's where the concept came of, okay, I'm going to take all these different learnings. We had professors coming in from Harvard and Oxford and all these wonderful schools who were teaching us the business models and the mindset and the framework. But what I did was I took that information and tried to apply it to these big social problems and try to reflect on the ways in which I could apply my creativity to sort of put a spin on what these sustainable business models could look like. And I do think at the time there wasn't a huge emphasis on that. I can see in programming for young entrepreneurs now, there is a change in that. But things like solving climate change and gender equity are very important things, or creating personalized medicine for very diverse and marginalized populations, recognizing that people who do come from different backgrounds have different subsets of genetics or cultural experiences, which really frame the way in which their health and well-being is affected, for example. So, yeah, I think, there are these different barriers as a female founder. And I know for myself, I've had one really bad experience at one point that I never thought it would really happen to me, but I was across a mentor who was a white male, and I was talked down to for an entire mentorship call for about an hour with my co-founder. And it was very uncomfortable. I was essentially told to read more academic literature on women of color, of marginalized experiences. And I'm not sure like where that discrepancy was, but yeah, it felt like I was being taught about my own culture when I knew what my lived experience was. And I had spoken to over 1,000 women who were female founders at that point. And I had the humility to acknowledge, where my biases might be, my need to continue to learn, but I was put in a very uncomfortable situation. And that was hard to deal with. But I decided, it took a lot for my co-founder and I to come to a point where, hey, I think we should actually talk to the program director about this, because we never wanted someone to go through what we went through in that conversation. So we decided to step forward and tell the director about our experience so that no other woman had to experience what we went through in that phone call.
Yeah, I really think it's great that you took the initiative and did that. Yeah, we touched on this a little bit, but we talk about adversity a lot, but have there been any times where your being a female has actually been an advantage for you guys?
I mean, we're awesome, right? Just being females. We hold a power that that men don't hold? I have to think about this one.
I think,
You know,
oh, go ahead, Vu.
go ahead. Go, Ravina.
No, you go. I'll go after. Don't worry.
I think, we talk a lot about being the only female in the room, but if we flip that, it's a huge advantage. How often do you walk into a big room and you want to be noticed and recognized, right? But here we are. I mean, yes, it's not fair. Yes, we might look a little awkward, but I walk into a room with all of the founders or like whatever it is, and then just you as a female, most likely you're gonna get called on. Now, the only thing you need to do is always be prepared to have something smart to say because you might get called on, right? But all of a sudden you get all of these attention, the opportunity to speak out about who you are, what you're doing, so that you can get attention, because the other like 30 men sitting there, they're probably gonna pick out another 2 or 3, but they're not gonna get 30. So I think that's a huge advantage that you want to leverage, being stand out, like being the only person in the room, until we level the playing field so that we get a lot more of us to promote each other. So I think that's the big one. I think the other second one that I find myself being a female founder is, and again, I've never been a male founder to know what they are, but for a female founder, the community of supported female founders are amazing. I think we want each other to succeed so badly that we do whatever it takes to help the other founders. And I think the rest can speak, but at least from my side, we are part of this female founder community on the on social, Facebook. Nobody ever know each other at all, but any question, anything you need, doesn't really matter. Everybody jumps in for you, midnight call. And I found that support amazing because we want each other to succeed. We want some of us to make it so that we can set the role for everybody else. And I think until everybody is, as a female, succeeding and level the playing field, I think that need to help each other is probably going to go away, but I think it's going to be here for us. And leveraging that support network is mind blowing in my mind. But that's from my experience. We'd love just to hear from the rest.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
You can go.
Okay. Yeah. No, just to build off of that, what I was going to say is, I think as female identifying and women in general, we love to collaborate. So we do focus on collaboration, and that's a brilliant piece to have. Vu touched on that community aspect, but we really are socialized in a way to be more relationship oriented. And I do think that is a huge advantage that, yes, you can see your competitor, but you're willing to look for ways in which you can collaborate. And that's something actually at Flick specifically, Michelle and I, we never saw anyone as competitors necessarily. We saw them as partners. And that was the way in which we were organically able to grow at first, was we looked for those partnerships where hand in hand we could help out each other and formulate a community where people felt like they were supported. And I think to move forward from that, another component that I see that we have a slightly bigger edge on, that I believe was in a certain study, but women scored higher than men when it came to emotional intelligence. So I think this is something very imperative when it comes to leadership, having that self-awareness and the empathy, as well as the ability to listen. So I think that can play an instrumental role when you're either creating the corporate culture that you want, the culture you want within your startup, or when it comes for you leading your own companies. And I think just the last point there, in relationship to leadership, is women are great multitaskers. I think they're able to juggle more than the average male can at times. You know, if you are someone who is a mother or a parent, you know those complexities that come along with having to do A, B, and C and juggle it all at once. At times we are great at scheduling, at prioritizing, but ensuring that everyone is feeling listened to at the table, and that we're able to embark on our strengths that allow us to formulate, once again, community, family, and that's driven in our passion and who we are as people. And I think that's something that we should continuously bring to the table.
I agree with what you guys both said. I have nothing more to add.
I have one last thing to add. Women in general, we are awesome at our attention to detail. And when you're running a business or you're getting a project going, whatever it is, that attention to detail can make all the difference between success and failure. And being able to pay attention to the details about a person with the emotional intelligence, I think that's absolutely the case, because you are learning about the people you're working with and you're serving in your business in some aspect. We all have a customer. It doesn't matter what type of customer they are, they're still a customer. Understanding that and remembering those details and putting them to use in your business will make a huge difference, because as much as we would all love to live in a world where everyone gets all the venture capital on the planet that they want, that is not always the case. So I know for myself, I have not had any venture capital ever come into my company. I'm 100% organically grown, and it's hard. It's very difficult to get up there and get going, because you're responsible for a lot. But it's those details that made all the difference in the long run to be able to survive.
All right, thank you for that. Did anyone else have any comments on that topic? All right, I think we can move on to the next question we had. So what do you believe are the most important skills or traits for someone who wants to start a startup?
Yeah, maybe I can start on that one. Important traits: not being afraid to fail. That's a good one, because startups are so risky. There's a very high probability that your venture is not going to work. So you have to be okay with that. And but to me, it's always been just a fantastic learning experience. So even when I started my company, I knew that there was a very small chance that we would get to the next stage, and then the next and the next. And I think right now we're on this upward incline where I'm feeling better and better about how it's going to go in the long run. But still, there are things that can't work. I mean, we have a lot of technical risk in what we're doing. We also have to get our cell therapy products approved through the FDA. So those things are going to play out as they will, and they're not necessarily under my control. So I come into work every day and say, okay, what is the best that I can do? How am I making sure that we're making the most compelling strategic choices for Celino? So I'm always living a little bit right on the edge of what's possible and really pushing the envelope, and being okay with that, being okay with the outcome not playing out the way you want it to. And that's what startups are about. So many times you have this big idea, you want to change the world. And Ravina, you talked about personalized medicine, and that's what we do at Celino. We make personalized stem cell therapies custom to each human being, and our motto is every human, every cell. And nobody's ever done that before, because it's technologically very challenging. It's very expensive to do that. And my company, founded by 3 physicists, two of us happen to be women of color. There's a lot of unique combinations going on in what we're doing. And this unique combination has never been tried before. So I think if you think about it rationally, I don't know if somebody would embark on this path, because it feels so risky. So I came into it when I first was introduced to the concept of trying to do a startup. I reached out to my lab mate, Marina, who is my co-founder now, because we'd worked together for 3 years. And I said, hey, everybody's talking to me about a startup. What do you think? Should we do it? And she said, yeah, let's do it. Why not? What's the worst that could happen? It doesn't work out in a year, and then you'll go do a postdoc, Nabia. I'll go teach community college. I was like, yeah, that's pretty much the downside if things don't work out. And she said, okay, well, why not? Let's try it for a year and see what happens. So that was a very pivotal moment for us to just take that leap of faith. So that's been amazing. And then the other thing that I find myself doing a lot is on the strategy side, and this is not something I actively engaged with when I was a scientist working in a lab, but now I feel like every day at work for me, it feels like, and maybe a lot of you watch Queen's Gambit, so maybe this is a good reference. It really feels like playing chess, but playing multi dimensions of chess every day. and being able to figure out, okay, what if I make this strategic move here with a partner or with an investor or this hire? How does it affect everything else? So I think going back to what Amber said about creativity and how that's so helpful in building new technologies or businesses, that's definitely been true for me. So yeah, just being okay living on the edge and making bold choices. That's been definitely my motto. And I think this year it's more so because we just closed a significant round of venture capital dollars where like, okay, how far can we push it and take some bets?
I'll say another, I think when you're starting off as a female founder, I think there's two strong characteristics that you need to have. I think you have to be resilient because being a startup, there's so many things that come your way that are not expected. And how are you going to kind of roll with the punches? You can't really, when you have a company, you can't give up, right? So you have to really think fast on your feet and just stay strong in what you believe in. Another thing I always like to tell starting female founders is you have to block out the haters. Because when you have cool ideas, there's going to be a lot of people that don't understand your vision, right? And when people don't understand your vision, a lot of times they're going to be like, don't do that. That's so crazy. But because they're not seeing it how you're seeing it. And if you kind of believe what they're saying, then you're going to give up on this cool company that could be worth $1 billion in 2 years. So I always say block out the haters and the naysayers because they don't know what you know and they don't have your vision of what you want to create.
Just to add to that, it's not taking it personal. When you build a company, it's kind of like a kid that you're raising it from infancy, bringing it on up there, and you're attached to it because you put your blood, sweat, and tears into it. And it's really hard when someone is throwing shade at your company and things. You're like, what? I'm going to come for you and I'm going to, hunt you down because you cannot do that. This matters to me. You have to remember that it is a business and you can't take it personal. I mean, there's always a little tiny bit of personal in there, but at the end of the day, you are trying to make a successful business and you have to step back and look at it objectively and say, okay, maybe they're seeing something I'm not going to see because I'm too close to it, because I care too much about it. And that's a really hard point to get to, that you're willing to be like, okay, I see that my kid is maybe not as pretty as I thought it was, and I need to make some changes. Those are things you adjust and find, but not taking things personally is obviously a little harder for us as females than it is for our male counterparts, perhaps.
Did anyone else have anything to add? All right, I think we can move on to the last question that I had. So what advice would you give to young women who might be thinking about beginning their trek into tech or entrepreneurship, but are a little bit hesitant?
I can start. I think my biggest thing is just get started. If you have an idea, just get started. Start building it out, whatever it looks like. And even if it doesn't work the first time, that's okay. You're going to learn different things. You can reiterate. You can continue to pivot and see what ends up working, but just get started. And I think to build off of that is take the time to also reflect on your why, reflect why you're building this, who is it going to help, what's the community, what problem am I solving, and think through those steps in a very thoughtful manner. And that will help you to figure out, what is it that I want to build and create? And then once you sort of figure that out, get started immediately. And I'm sure it'll evolve over time, but it's sort of these two things that come together. And then, you'll have that purpose in your work that lets you get up every single day. You know why you're going in, you know who you're solving your issue for. And I think that's one of the best things that can come about diving into the world of entrepreneurship and creativity and building something from scratch. I know for me, it's very rewarding to see different messages come in where young women have either been inspired to start their own business after an apprenticeship or have been hired or were exposed to a whole new world that they didn't even know was out there. And on the other hand, founders who have had a very tough time during COVID-19, especially early stage founders who have been able to bring on talent to help scale their businesses, who have found meaning in providing mentorship to these young women and potential employment opportunities. And they're able to see the tangible impact that is happening from them giving their time. So I do think there's a lot of different things there, but just hearing those experiences, I think solidifies my purpose in some sense.
And I think it all boils down to confidence as well. I think Ravina, you kind of touched it on the beginning. It's kind of like being confident in your idea and just doing it. I think a lot of people, the only time you fail is when you don't do it. Because if you do it, you can't fail because you're learning so much in the process. So be okay with failing in a sense. Be okay with learning and getting back up and trying it again. And I think, in order to be confident in your idea, I think you just have to do a lot of research, do a lot of market research of why are you creating this company? Who is your target market? Why is there a need for what you're creating? And I think once you kind of solidify your why, your reason, that will also give you more confidence to kind of just pick up and do it.
Yeah, totally agree with everything China and Ravina have said. I would love to reflect on some beautiful words that Vu had earlier in the session about community, and that's so important. And I definitely I was very fortunate to find some mentors early in the process who believed in me more than I believed in myself. And that if there are people that exist in your life who can support you that way, that's incredible. And then the other part was definitely having a team. Not that you need to have a team, but I definitely find it very helpful to have an amazing group of co-founders to lean on as we make these challenges, calling them at 10 p.m., at 5 a.m. about some crisis on the weekend, just being obsessed. I mean, it's an obsessive job. So it's really nice to share that load and know that there are other people with you who are just as obsessed as you, and you can lean on each other and troubleshoot together. That's been fantastic. And then the other thing, but the flip side of that, I definitely pushed myself extremely hard my whole life because I'm on this mission and I know why I'm doing this. I want to make the world a better place. And of course, we also want to make lots of money, and doing those two at the same time requires a lot of hard work. I will say though, looking back, if I could give advice to my younger self, it would definitely be to take better care of my health, because the things that are happening to my health as I get older are very strange, and I'm pretty sure they're stress related. And then you start to realize that, okay, I don't know if this is sustainable for the rest of your life to be going at this constant pace. So if you have opportunities before you start your entrepreneurial journey to take a break, take a gap year or something before you jump in, take care of your health, do all of those things if you can, and don't underestimate how valuable they'll be in the long run for your health and well-being.
I love how you tapped into that, touched on that, because I think it's all about a balance. I had to learn how to balance because in the beginning, I was so obsessed with like starting in and making sure everything was perfect. And then I realized I had no life. Like I was doing this 24/7. And I realized like, okay, I need to have a balance where I'm still going out and seeing friends and, making sure I'm exercising. And I think learning that balance in the beginning is going to be crucial to how how your life is going forward as well.
That's a very good question for all of us. How many of us are actually balanced right now? COVID has really messed up the balance for me as well. But that is a huge deal. I completely agree. It is very hard. So as women, we also raise families a lot of the times and things like that. It's hard to have that balance. And I was a single mom for many years there, and I have 2 kids, and I still ran a company. That balance was the hardest balance of my entire life. So get a great support group. If you can have great founders with you, fantastic. Great friends, women. I have not experienced great female networking. It's probably just the space I am in. I wish it was better. But if you can get women to support you, or you are not supporting other women, start doing it, because it's hugely valuable and it is hard to find. Because for some reason we want to knock each other down, and I don't know why. So do try to support one another as much as you can.
You know, the last thing I say might be not something you want to hear, but I'll be very honest. Don't start the company unless you really, really want it and you're ready. It's just gonna be the hardest thing you ever do. And I don't know, the rest of you guys can correct me. It's just gonna get harder and harder. The more money you're gonna get, the harder it is gonna be, right? The more people you're gonna get, the harder it's gonna be. It's just never easy. Now, the one thing that's gonna stay the same or better is that your passion and just the impact that you're gonna make. But you gotta make sure that you're really ready. Ask yourself, are you ready to contribute or dedicate and sacrifice this next 17 years of your life in this journey? Knowing that anything that you see in the newspaper, the high, just the very little moments of it, but there's a lot of challenges ahead of you, right? So it's okay if you want to build your time, and as Nabi has said, right, like take that mental gap, the physical gap, the health gap, or just whatever hobbies you do, because once you step in it, you can't stop, right? You don't just say, okay, and I'm very tired, I'm gonna stop, because the entire company depends on you. You have responsibility for yourself and for everybody else as well. So choose a time that's ready for you. Don't look around and say, oh my God, everybody's starting the company, I have to do it right now. Don't say that, oh, I'm still very young, I need to start now so that if I screw up, I have another 20 years to continue doing it. But don't feel like I'm so old already, I can't do it anymore. Everybody has their own time. And I keep telling a lot of young people when they feel like, oh my God, everybody around me starting a company, I have to do it. I said, don't do it unless you know why you want to do it and you're really ready. Otherwise, it's just getting harder and harder. And you know, the social capital that you build in your life becomes so important as you start your company. You might never need that social capital like those mentors and whatnot if you work for a company, because you're all smart enough to know how to climb the ladder in the company. But when you start your own company, you're going to realize that you know the 1%, the other 99% are the things that you don't know at all. You're going to start opening your Rolodex and just calling up every people left and right. How do I fire this person? How do I build this? How do I do that? Right? Like just everything is new to you. So you need a lot of social capital, people that you know from a long time ago, people that you happen to help, and then now they help you back. It's just a lot of that going around when you start your company. So again, make sure that you're ready. Ask everybody, hey, am I ready? Ask yourself. And the most important thing is, why do you want to do it? And then jump right in. Otherwise, don't. It's okay to start to work for somebody else before you start your company. I don't know, people had some average stat that say the average success rate is somewhere in like mid 30s. You don't have to be you don't have to be the 18 years old to be successful at that just yet, right? Like you still have a lot of time in your life to enjoy your life. So I'll just end with that from my perspective, because I wish that that we all know the reality of it, so that it doesn't become too rosy, and then you're just gonna regret otherwise.
I want to piggyback on that because I think as a society, we make entrepreneurship look so easy. Like you have an idea and you're going to raise $50 million, right? And that's not what it looks like at all once you're in it. So I think you, like Vu said, you need to be passionate about your idea, passionate about what you're building. Because if you're not passionate about it, it's just not going to go anywhere, because you're not going to really have the energy to keep it going every day. So just know what you're getting yourself into. Not everyone is meant to be a CEO of a tech company or to be a tech founder. There's so many other roles that you can do that might be more passionate for you. So just make sure that you know what you're getting, like Lou said, know what you're getting yourself into once you're starting your company.
Yeah, and just to go off of that, I mean, being a founder and diving into that world, you are going to wear every single hat. You are HR, accounting, legal, everything. And that can be very stressful. And you're right, at times, the entrepreneurial life can be quite glamorized. But, you know, there is a stark reality behind it. You are grinding every day. And I think it was touched on before, you know, you call your co-founder at 10 p.m. or 5 a.m. And, you know, my co-founder and I, the past month, there's just been a lot going on, and we're waking up 3 to 4 times a night and having interrupted sleep. And so there comes a point, I like how everyone's talking about balance. You know, I've actually just never believed in the concept of balance, but now I'm trying to get to a point where hopefully I'm able to time manage and reflect a little bit more and take time for myself in a way that's still productive because of how I operate. But it's been very hard. I think I know myself very well. I'm very obsessive. And I do have very clear conviction in what my purpose is. I think it was mentioned earlier, right? Like, you know what your mission is, you know why you're here, why you're placed on earth, and what you have to do. And so I think there comes a point where hopefully I can find this happy medium where I'm not consumed by my work and my purpose. Can't help it at times, but yeah, just taking a step back is really important. And I do like what was discussed before. If you do have to take a gap year or have a year off, I can sort of see my path on that way. You know, I do feel like my health is also going through a few things right now. And I want to ensure that I am not burnt out by the time in the next 5 years before I hit 30. And you know, I want to be careful. So I'm trying to take those steps right now. But I do encourage all of you, definitely take that time. If you can take a gap year or take a little bit of time off, it'll pay off in the long run. And I do wish I did that at some point. It just didn't happen that way. I came across into this, and it is what it is. But hopefully moving forward, I'm able to incorporate certain things.
Just to build off of some of the things that we touched on, you know, we talk about like being motivated and like finding our passion, and that's why we start these companies, right? But you know, what are some of the things you do when you hit that slump, or when you do burn out? Like, what are some of the sort of activities that you like to do when your company just suddenly stops being, you know, the number one priority at that time?
I have not had that moment yet where I've been doing this for almost 4 years now. So it's never not been a priority, but I do just physically feel exhausted, Samantha. So I'll just be like, okay. So for example, I have a board meeting coming up for next month, and I definitely want to go on some type of vacation, staycation right after, just to give my brain a rest. But it's always a priority. And like Ravina, like you, yeah, I wake up in the middle of the night many times, don't even know why. I thought I was pretty well rested before going to bed, or had my life under control. So there's always this constant adrenaline and push to keep doing better, pushing yourself, your team, your vision, everything. But you know, if I do like hanging out with my friends, I like to eat, you know, I like art, I like watching movies, but I don't know if there's any real sense of balance or real pattern or rhythm that's established. Although this year I forced myself to stick to a hardcore workout routine 6 days a week, which has been life changing. So like every morning do it, and I've convinced myself now that I will have a good day if I work out in the morning. So that's been good brainwashing for myself. And then the other thing is just, I guess I've been trying to just block my time very intentionally. So, you know, setting my mornings aside to get more strategy, creative work done, and then stacking all my meetings starting at noon, sometimes going late, depending on if I'm having a lot of West Coast calls. But that's been really good, and trying really hard not to work on the weekends, which is the first time in my life that I'm trying to do that. And it's great. It's a great choice. But still, things are always moving, and I'm always on. Yeah.
I think as a founder, you never not think about your company. Like, I don't think there's a day where you're like not kind of focusing on your company. But for me, what have worked for me is taking time to hang out with friends, dancing. That's a huge stress reliever for me, is even if it's like Zumba, working out for the day, or going out dancing with my friends on the weekend. I think that has kind of rejuvenated me. And that's how I get my stress out the way. And traveling is also.
As someone who has burned out multiple times in a long journey of owning a company, it is really important to make sure that you plan your life, because it is something that you think about. There's a reason you wake up at 3 a.m. thinking, oh, I wonder how payroll is going to go this time. You know, am I going to make it? How many families depend on me? Did I make the right insurance choices for everyone? Because it's a lot of responsibility. So it's the little things where I'm a huge advocate. It's going to sound really old because now I feel really old on this panel, but I am an advocate for family dinner, because many times I would have to go back to work after dinner. But I made sure I always sat down with my family and took that mental break that said, this matters. I'm listening to other people and what are happening in their life to stay connected to the other things in my life that were not the company. Because that's very hard to do when you live and breathe it and sleep with it and have notepads on your nightstand where you jot down ideas because it's the middle of the night. And then the last thing to really get out of the burnout, as an entrepreneur, guess what? You're probably going to start more than one company. It's addictive. You will just be like, oh, what's the next one? What's my next idea? I've already got this going. I bought a farm, so that was obviously my next idea, but I chose something that I could take a tech break from. I love technology. I'm sure all of you do, but I made sure the other venture I spend my time on doesn't have that much to do with technology. And I say that, but I have little sensors I'm putting out into my farm so I can tell what's happening with the soil and stuff like that. But it's making sure I have that diversification that is a step back from what I maybe do for the 12 hours a day that I do it, into something else. I trimmed berries after work yesterday. It was fantastic. It was very rejuvenating. And it made it so when I woke up at 5 for meetings the next day, I was ready to go. So balance that out with something that's tech maybe, and then not tech.
All right, if we don't have any more comments on that, we're doing pretty good for time. So now I'm just going to open the floor up to any questions from any attendees. So you can either just drop your question into the chat, or you can come on mic, and this could be just a general question to all panelists, or a directed question to any specific one of them. Right, we had a question from Leah. How did you find someone to co-found your company with?
So my co-founder, my first one, I was my lab mate, and we'd worked together for 4 years until that point. So she was the first immediate person that I asked, because she's super smart and I love working with her. I think that's most probably going to be the best working relationship I'll ever have in my career. So yeah, it was awesome. And then our third co-founder, it's a little bit like we were talking about how you need to have, yeah, Vu was talking about, you need this community of people who you need to talk to and ask for help. So when I was wrapping up my PhD and I knew we were going to, Marina and I were going to try to do a startup, I started asking everybody, every meeting I went to, hey, I'm looking for an expert to help us with building the instrumentation, because I don't know how to do that. So I was always looking for people that had skill sets I didn't. And pretty quickly, I think within 2 weeks, we were introduced to Matthias, our third co-founder, and he's a serial entrepreneur. He's built 3 optical technology companies in the Boston area. And, you know, I thought he would be a mentor, advisor, but in our second coffee meeting, we just had a great connection. And he said, oh, I want to do this with you. What do you think? I was like, I would love that. And he started building our first prototypes, our laser scanning prototypes, in what I like to call his garage. So that's how we started. So I think that's been a huge part of my experience. I'm not afraid to admit the things that I don't know. There's a lot of things I don't know. Having been trained as a physicist, moving into biology, and now moving into regenerative medicine, and I'm always looking to work for the people who know a lot about those topics. So that's how my team's really formed over the past couple of years. And now we're moving into intellectual property, regulatory, and completely new topics that I'm not an expert in, and that's been great.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I met Michelle in the program Next 36, but it was funny because coincidentally, we'd actually met 2.5 years before for about 3 hours, and she was interning for my my uncle's media company in Vancouver. and we were at this event and we definitely hit it off. And she likes to say she sent me a Facebook friend request and I didn't respond, but I never saw it. And then, yeah, we coincidentally, we were roomed together. We applied separately. We had no idea. She's, I believe, 2 or 3 years younger than me. She makes me feel very old at times. But yeah, we instantly clicked. And I think it was a good relationship in that we both felt an earn for like the problem that we were solving. We came from somewhat similar backgrounds, of course, STEM backgrounds, but she absolutely loved marketing. She had worked to help expand Bumble Canada. She was very involved with videography in that creative sense. And I, on my end, loved operational work. I loved sort of putting out a framework of how to get from A to B. I was more analytical in my thinking, and I had vast experiences where we could tap into different communities and networks to figure out what we had to do next, where we could create and build. And then similar, when it came to the team aspect and building out a team, bringing on a CTO, Michelle had encountered another individual a few years earlier working on a project with him. I was very involved in my community once again. And so I remember taking a step back. I was sitting with her and I said, you know, I've met this person here, and they were the smartest in this and this. And I know that they would be passionate about it. So it just kind of came down to getting on a call with them, explaining them what we were building, and ensuring, I think, first of all, that they were mission driven and they found purpose in what we were creating. The second thing that we looked for was value alignment. Michelle and I came up with 5 values. I remember I think we listed out like 100 of them, and then we honed down on 5, ensuring that they reflected those values. And then a big thing for us was humility and coachability. You didn't necessarily have to be like the smartest person in the world, but that ability to say, hey, like, I actually don't know this. I'll have to ask for help in this. Or the coachability sense where you knew you could get in conversations with different teammates, value their opinion, take that feedback, reiterate, and sort of just acknowledge the way in which you could be taught and that this whole thing was going to be a learning process. So those were some of the things that we looked for when it came down to onboarding more people onto the team. And yeah, it's just been a great experience so far.
All right, I guess we can move on to the question right below that. So Shreya said, I absolutely love this conversation. I am an executive member of a group in Northern Alberta that promotes women in STEAM, and especially in coding, called Queens in Code. One thing I want to be able to do is help provide internship experiences to girls in the tech space. Do you have any advice for high school girls looking for tech employment in daunting environments? And what can we do to keep confidence in our own abilities to thrive in that space?
I think it's really important to ask. I know a lot of you that are in high school are probably intimidated to go out and find someone in social media and just say, hey, do you have any opportunities? Go ahead and ask them, or say, I'm really good at this and I think I can help you, and this is how I can help you. Research out who you're asking for the opportunity with. Don't just go in and be like, I'm cool, I know how to code, you know, I'm great at Python, and then they have nothing to do with Python, because they're going to be like, well, you didn't really do a lot of research. So be willing to ask and then research out what you're asking to do, and you will get that opportunity. I've worked with a lot of high schoolers because everyone deserves a shot. And you just have to be willing to take whatever opportunity they're going to give you. It might not be the thing you're looking for, and you might be like, well, this is shit. This is not what I wanted, but it's an opportunity, and those can lead to other opportunities, but you have to take both the good and the bad.
And I also think there's power. Don't be afraid of your age, because there's power in your age. There's power of bringing fresh new ideas to any tech company that you're at. So I say don't be intimidated because you think you're young and there's so much older people in your space. Take it as a how do you say it? Take it as a, like, that's the power that you bring, is you bring these fresh ideas, and you guys are Generation Zers. That's who's going to be the next generation of creators of tech companies. So understand the power that you guys bring to any internship that you are applying to.
All right. So Jenny asked, if you were to do one thing differently along your journey, what would it be and why?
I probably would have asked more questions in the beginning. I think the power of asking questions and not being and not having a not being arrogant and thinking that you know it all in the beginning of your entrepreneurship journey, I think is crucial to how fast you're going to be successful. So don't be afraid to reach out and to ask questions and being okay with sounding dumb. And there's no question that's dumb, you know what I mean? So there's power in reaching out. I had to learn that early on.
You know, China, just to build on that one of my very early experience in my early career when I was in Denmark, right? Again, sitting in a room of like, I don't know, 40, 50 C-level suite male people is super intimidating. And I multiple meetings going on and on. I realized that I walk out of the meeting, nobody ever heard a word from me at all. And so I read somewhere, I watched something on YouTube or TED Talk, but one advice that I got that still stuck with me is that you gotta make sure that you ask something or say something in the first few minutes of any meeting or anything that you're in, because the longer you wait, the more afraid you're gonna become, and you most likely never ask. And so I took that advice. It doesn't really matter in the first few minutes. And make sure that I say something. Of course, initially it could be very random. Just make sure that your voice is out there. The moment that you open your voice, you start feeling like you fire your voice, people hear you, and it's not as stupid as you thought it would be. Then you start doing more and more of that. And I kind of carry that all the way through my Stanford GSB, right? It's again in the classroom of all of the MBA, all type A. Everybody's going to raise their hands like crazy. If you don't get yourself in there, you're probably never going to get yourself to be spoken out. And first of all, of course, you want people to know you, but second, you do come with a lot of good ideas that you want to contribute to the community, and you lose that chance for yourself and for the community. So again, I keep that with me for a long time until I feel like, okay, now I'm not confident, I'm not afraid anymore. I'll speak when I really want to. I don't speak when I don't want to, but initially I had to really push myself. And so I think, Jenna, I think, thank you for bringing that up, because I think at least myself personally had that challenge at the beginning.
One last thing for someone who's done it for a long time, be careful of your growth. When you have a great idea and it takes off, all of a sudden you're like, I have made all this money, I've got all these people, I've got all of this. And for every up, there is a down. And you have to be prepared for both sides of that as an entrepreneur, because it's not always going to be up. Those are the great days. But then when it falls hard, and you have to be able to look at what you learned in that process, pick it up, and then bring it to the next up. A business never sits just on one level. It goes like this all the time. And you have to know to not go, I'm going to go out and get a Tesla. I had a wonderful day. This is it. I've hit it. And it's always going to be like this, because the next day you're going to be like, now I can't afford the power for my Tesla. You know, it's that balance. And so make sure that you don't take that for granted.
All right. So Sophia asks, just as Tria mentioned, thank you to all the panelists for your amazing insight. Your ideas were so eye-opening. What resources did you draw upon to accelerate the growth of your startup? For example, how did you connect to / find opportunities to pitch to investors, connect with accountants and lawyers, etc.?
I think I can touch on the student side of that. So if you are a student founder or a recent grad, for us, we, started at our university. So just figuring out what non-dilutive funding was offered through the universities, what accelerator programs they had on campus, and then other student founder accelerator programs across North America. And that was a good way to sort of be immersed around other student founders and get access to things like a touch point for an accountant or legal, because most of the times these different firms and companies would pair up with the accelerator programs, which was really nice. So I would encourage you to leverage your student status if you're a student right now. Look at what's available at your university campus within your area. I'm always happy to touch base after with some of the programs that we went through that were great. If you're based in the US, of course, there are so many opportunities. I can't even touch on them compared to up north. So definitely just start at that university level, see what's there. And that's that's why I say it is good to some extent to start entrepreneurship or just see what you can build and create in university. Because even though it ends up being an uncomfortable journey and the only certainty is uncertainty in entrepreneurship, at least you are in this safe space at times where you can try different things out and see what's there. And I think university is a great time to sort of see what resonates or just build and create and learn from that.
All right, did anyone else have something to say to this question?
Yeah, maybe I can comment on the connect, and because Ravina covered it really well with the university ecosystems. That's how I got started. And even, yeah, Boston has an amazing set of accelerator programs, like running all the time, every quarter, all year. So you just have to lean in and do it. And there's a lot of amazing resources. So that was great. The connect to find opportunities to pitch to investors. That's always a work in progress. From what I've learned, the best intros to investors are from founders in portfolios, in their portfolios that have ideally had an exit. That's not a big universe of people. So it again comes back to networking and getting to know these people. So one cool thing that I always do is whenever there's a founder or a company that I'm inspired by, I try to connect with them because first of all, I want to learn. But in the long run, also, if there's any future potential that you might be interested in talking to their investors and you have a great relationship with this founder, they're most probably very happy to make that intro. And that's a good way to do it. And then having strong advisors. So I have lots of advisors in Boston, of course, but I actually have one advisor in the Bay Area who's very connected to, she's a venture capitalist, and I met her very early at a Women in Biotech conference when I was a graduate student. And yeah, she did a lot of intros for me in the early days. And then you really just start to get to know people and it flows more naturally. But in the early days, it really was having a few key people who supported you and made those intros for you. That's how I got in through the door on Sand Hill Road. Yeah.
All right. I don't think there were any more questions in the chat, but I know there were some questions on our sign up form. So I'll just quickly go look at that. I think, all right. So someone asked in the sign up form, well, this like applies to some, I'm sure, but might not apply as much to others. But what did you study in school to make sure that you were prepared to start your own company? So, I mean, I'm sure for Navia that matters a lot, but for the other panelists, if you had any other comments on that.
Well, I will say, yes, I studied how to be a physicist and make the invention, but there was no formal training on how to be an entrepreneur, which is completely different. And I will say most of that training for me came through things like having to run my biophotonics subgroup in graduate school because my professor was completely MIA, and I had to do everything to run the group and run our grants. Or I ran the Model UN team when I was in college with 100 people and competed and traveled and did a lot of public speaking. Those things really helped me. And I don't think all scientists should be entrepreneurs. I think just to be clear, I think because I had those other skill sets, I'm a good fit for what I'm doing today, but that's not true for all of us. Yeah, but would love to hear what everybody else thinks.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I pursued like a Bachelor of Science. I did focus on biosci, physics and stuff, but for me, I had a huge passion for the humanities, and that's something that I'm a strong advocate for. I think looking back, I actually just wish I majored in like philosophy and history, because I think to what Amber said before, a lot of how she trained herself was self-taught. And to some degree, even though I was in university and I was learning as much as I could, a lot of the skills that I've got to where I am today didn't come from the classroom. I actually often wasn't even really in class, to be honest. I was just doing things and building outside of it. And if I was in class, I was usually in the front row just trying to Google ways to get funding for my ideas. But as you can see in the back, I am a very avid reader. And so a lot of what it came from was I started reading around 4 at a bit of a higher level. And so I took a lot of that. And what I was seeing in my reading was everything was so interconnected. And when I got to university, I felt like I was being pushed into one corner. And I'm just lucky I had a professor that advocated for me to be allowed to take humanities courses because, to be quite frank, at that time, they were very strict in terms of I could even only major and minor within my own specific field. And so I think I just have this broad sense of everything is related together. And if I don't know it, if I'm not going to learn it in school, I'm going to read as much as I can and then try and build or reach out to people that could help me get to where I needed to be. And so even with that, I used to cold email people all the time. And I don't know where that confidence came from, but I think it was a sentiment and a mindset that the worst thing that could happen was I got a no. And I don't know what it is. I've just never been fazed by a no failure in some sense or getting rejection. I think to me, I'm very aware that the people around me are absolutely brilliant. People are 10 times probably more qualified than I am, have more resilience and grit, or have a different narrative and a lived experience that met that criteria at that particular time. And so if I get rejected from something, clearly I'm being redirected in a different way, or the fact is someone else was like more qualified or met what someone was looking for. So yeah, I think see it as a redirection or keep trying. And yeah, I've easily got over 100 rejections in my life. Everyone will like look at my CV and see, oh, you've done X, Y, and Z, or you've received X, Y, and Z, but they don't see the stuff that I never got. I just decided not to dwell on it because once again, I think as a daughter of immigrants, for example, I've always been very grateful that I've been able to settle in this land in Canada and be exposed to these opportunities. So it's just persistence, grit, and resilience to keep moving forward on that front.
All right, any last comments on that topic?
I'll just say I loved everything you said, Ravina. That just shows how much you have to have resilience being a founder and being in the startup space. I don't necessarily think you have to have a specific degree to be a founder. I think being an entrepreneur is its own degree in itself, because you're going to be learning so much as you're going through it. I have a degree in healthcare management, which is totally nothing to do with technology. So I think you guys really have the opportunity right now to start your own company in high school. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing stopping you from starting a company. You don't actually need to have a degree to start your own company. Yeah, start it now.
Yeah, remember that a lot of times the thing you're entrepreneurial about is while you're actually in another job, that you're doing it in your off hours. You're not doing it during your normal, 9 to 5 that exists out there. So you never know when you're going to have that good idea and just start it and see what it grows into. It doesn't have to be in that core part. You can go get a job at Starbucks, McDonald's, wherever you want to be. That doesn't mean that's what you're going to be. It's what you do in that off time that you're going to discover that entrepreneurial spirit that exists in you.
All right, I love those ending comments. It is over 7, and I do believe that lot of people might have to go, I don't know, eat dinner or whatnot, at least in Eastern time. But anyways, thank you so much for everyone to coming. Thank you so much to our panelists for showing up today. And thank you so much for all the attendees who came. And I really hope you got value out of this session. So yeah. Oh yes.
Thank you. You were a great moderator, Samantha.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. You did awesome.
Thank you, everybody. It was a great webinar over here. Great panelists.
Thank you all so much. I had a blast. I'm gonna have a great weekend because you gave me a nice boost of energy.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good night.